We're living in times right now where it's almost like your level of victim in the world is almost like a currency. It's actually something that you can transact and exchange. If you can declare your level of victimhood or your level of being a victim to the world, then our current system has really created this space that will, in a way, reward that victim. You know, you see it in the court cases, you see it in government policies, you see it in many different things. And, you know, this is a really, really gritty topic that I feel needs to be discussed a little bit. And it's a bit challenging sometimes because we have such a reactive nature. The victim shadow is deeply reactive and oppressive at times. And so with the 55th gene key really active in our collective right now, you know, I thought what better time than to bring up this theme of victimization and what does it mean to be a victim. And in the Gene Keys book, written by Richard Rudd, he's got this great little piece about the 55th gene key, you know, the shadow of victimization, where he essentially says, you know, we have two choices. We can be the victim of circumstances, you know, a victim of our current circumstances or the circumstances that led us to this point, and kind of put that responsibility in the outside world and the blame and all that into the outside world. Or we can take full responsibility for where we are now. And that in turn is what gives us freedom, the gift of victimization. And so this is something, when you just say it like that, if you are in that victim space, can be deeply provocative and triggering and saying, well, hang on a second, you don't have this situation I have to live in. You know, you've got it all easy, Mr., you know, middle-class white guy, or whatever the conversation goes, you know. And fair enough, you know, that there are really challenging situations, and it got me thinking, you know, so I've been doing some deep contemplations and watching my own victim patterns that would go out and even play all through the day. You know, I've been watching them as they come and go, and it got me thinking, you know, what is it to be a victim? And essentially, to be a victim is, you know, in a way, it's when your power of self-responsibility, your ability to respond, is taken away from you. So if your power to respond in life, your power to take an action that is resonant with your heart is taken away, then in a sense, in that moment, you are a victim to the situation. Now, what tends to happen, though, is that as much as we are a victim in that moment, the moment passes. And then after the moment happens, the trauma lives on in our brain. The perpetrator of that victim pattern, the perpetrator and the one who has kind of, you know, created this situation, might have been long gone. They might be off the planet and gone forever. But the trauma and the memory remains, and we remain a victim to that moment in history that no longer actually even exists, except as a figment within our imagination. And yet, of course, I'm not saying to take that lightly, that's a very real conundrum that we have as a human species. But what's really interesting is that we may not have had a choice in that moment of the experience where we were a victim. But every single moment that passes afterwards, there is the potential for freedom from that pattern. But in order to obtain that freedom, we need to be able to reclaim our responsibility for our current situation of where we are now in this real-time moment in time and space. And I used to hate this word responsibility. But when you break it down, responsibility is simply the ability to respond. So your responsibility is simply anywhere that you have an ability to respond. Your level of responsibility is the level of ability that you have to respond. And so as long as you are waiting for someone else to fix your situation, as long as you are waiting for someone to apologize, or for someone to change their behavior, or for someone to tell you that you were right and that, you know, you were, you know, really hard done by, as long as you're waiting for some kind of external situation, circumstance to change itself in order to give you freedom, then you will remain a victim. And you will remain in that shadow field, giving your power to respond away every single moment. But when we can, through different journeys and bringing self-awareness into our presence, as we become more self-aware, we can begin to claim that ability to respond, to say, I did have my power taken away in that moment, but this is a new moment. And if I slow down enough to then say, okay, so this is the situation that has occurred. You know, whatever the circumstances, as horrible as they are, this is what has happened. Instead of focusing on all the things that could have been better or all the ways I could have avoided this trauma and drama, if instead I sit there and focus on what are my actual real-time options in order to respond to this moment right now? What can I do? What actions can I take that are in my power right now that can make my situation better? Even if it's just one tiny piece. What can I do? And then focus my energy on that, and then continue to do that. And then eventually that progress of taking self-responsibility and that self-awareness around our victim patterns begins to evolve. And as it begins to evolve, our capacity to stop the momentum of the trauma and the momentum of the victim's, downslide, increases, and we become more empowered. We become more able to, not let our minds run the story of poor me in this moment, but rather begin to transmute and transform the suffering into empowered creation. Whether it be by creating music or creating art or creating a new project or just really connecting deeper with others or with the land or with yourself. And so I truly feel that in every victim experience, there is a deep, juicy wisdom that is waiting to be extracted, that is a gift from God, that is a gift from this universe. And it's what we as humans have come for. We have come not to have a happy-go-lucky, peaceful, magical, fairy tale kind of plateau of happiness, but rather we have come for the human experience to move through desires and move through the limitations of what it is to be human, and take these experiences that are quite traumatic at times and take them and turn them into paints. Just like the indigenous used to take, ochre and different, materials in nature and crush them up, mix them with water and turn them into paints. Turning your mud into paint and then create your art. And if you feel like your situation is so horrible, no one else has ever recovered from this, it's like, come on, Mark, easy for you to say. It doesn't take long nowadays to look out there and really see the incredible pathways that some people have taken from absolute disaster and horror. They have become some of the most empowered people. So I would challenge you in saying, the deeper your trauma, the deeper that experience, the deeper the gold, the greater the wisdom, the more juicy the experience, that when you can transmute that through your presence and self-awareness and your capacity to take responsibility for where you are now, so that you can reclaim your power and respond in a way that will get you closer to your dreams, rather than continually dragging you back into the cesspool of suffering, then you'll begin to discover a whole new level of freedom. And this freedom is what this human experience is all about. It's what we are all moving towards. And we are in some of the greatest, most intense times right now. And you're doing fantastic. So one last piece I wanted to add is when I looked at the Latin roots of the word victim, of what it essentially comes from, it comes from sacrifice. A victim, a sacrificial victim, was the animal that was used as a sacrifice to connect with the gods, as a gift to the gods. So in a sense, when we are a victim in our moments, it's where we are offering ourselves as a sacrifice to the gods, a sacrificial experience of suffering that in turn, through that sacrifice that we experience in this limitation, it opens up. If we are able to cultivate the awareness to digest that trauma and that suffering, it opens up a whole new level of connection, of connection to the universe, to allow life force to travel through us, to become inspired and to inspire others in ways that we couldn't dream of. So to be a victim in the moment may not be so bad. But when we continue to replay old, outdated victim stories, that's where it becomes real suffering. And so my challenge is, how can you take your victim pattern and turn it into art and discover your own freedom? And so if you'd like support in that, then I'm opening my gates up to take on new clientele. I'm stepping into my role and putting down my anchor, and I'm here to support. And you can check that out by looking at my booking site that I've got now, and website is coming soon at markbentley.as.me, where you can see you can book in for a human design session. And that's where I help you and others through this process of really just being human and moving out of the victim into the liberated experience. And I've also have a 5-week course on Cultivating Contemplation, which is based on the book by Richard Rudd that was just released in New York, The Art of Contemplation. So that's going to be a 5-week juicy experience with people from around the world, where we're going to take 5 weeks to really dive deep into cultivating our capacity to do just this, to take our victim patterns, to take our everyday mundane challenges in life and turn them into opportunities for growth and to extract the juiciest of wisdoms. And I'm really looking forward to that. So if you want more information on that, there's links with this video, and I look forward to seeing you there. Much love.